Taro had lived on Pine Valley Street for almost 6 years now. The small brown and white mixed-breed dog wasn't sure how old he was, but the gray fur around his muzzle told the story of many years gone by. Ever since his owner, old Mr. Chin, passed away, Taro had made the streets his home. But unlike most strays, he wasn't unwanted. The people of Pine Valley Street had a soft spot for the gentle dog. Mrs. Kapoor from number 23 always kept fresh water in a blue bowl outside her gate. The kids at the elementary school saved bits of their lunches for him. Even grumpy Mr. Rodriguez, who claimed to hate all animals, would sometimes, accidentally, drop pieces of his morning toast where Taro could find them. Taro had his daily routine down perfectly. In the mornings, he'd visit the school, wagging his tail as the children arrived. At lunch, he'd make his way to the local diner where Chef Zephyr would save some leftover bacon or eggs for him. The afternoons were for naps in the small park, and evenings meant a walk past all the houses where his many friends lived. But this Tuesday evening was different. As Taro walked past the Pine Valley Community Center, his ears picked up an odd sound. It wasn't the usual noise of kids playing basketball or old folks chatting on the benches. This sound was small and scared. Following his ears, Taro found himself behind the building, near the big garbage containers. The sound was clearer now, tiny meows coming from inside a cardboard box. Using his nose, Taro pushed the box until it fell on its side. Inside were 3 tiny kittens, no more than a few weeks old, shivering and hungry. Taro looked around, hoping to see their mother, but he knew deep down that these kittens had been left here on purpose. He remembered how scared and alone he felt when Mr. Chin died, and he couldn't leave these little ones to face the same fate. But what could one old dog do with 3 baby kittens? Taro thought hard. He needed help, human help. And he knew exactly who to ask. Miss Luna, the new veterinarian who had opened a clinic 2 blocks away, stayed late on Tuesdays to do paperwork. Taro had seen her help injured birds and sick squirrels, never asking for money when people couldn't pay. She had even given him treats a few times when he passed by her clinic. Very carefully, Taro picked up the box with his teeth. The kittens mewed louder, scared by the movement. "It's okay," Taro wanted to tell them. "I'm taking you somewhere safe." The walk to the clinic was slow. He had to be careful not to shake the box too much. When Taro reached the clinic, the closed sign was already up, but he could see light through the windows. He put down the box and scratched at the door, barking softly. After what felt like forever, Miss Luna's face appeared at the window. "Taro." She looked confused, then saw the box. Opening the door, she gasped when she saw what was inside. "Oh my goodness!" The kittens, scared by the sudden light and movement, tried to huddle closer together. "You brought them here?" Miss Luna asked, looking at Taro with surprise and respect. "You clever, wonderful boy." She quickly brought the box inside, and Taro followed, his tail wagging slightly. He watched as Miss Luna checked each kitten carefully. "They're dehydrated and hungry, but otherwise healthy," she said, more to herself than to Taro. She disappeared into the back room and came back with tiny bottles of milk. As she fed each kitten, Taro sat nearby, watching carefully like a proud parent. "You know," Miss Luna said, looking thoughtful, "I've been thinking about getting some help around here. The clinic could use a friendly face to greet patients and comfort scared animals." She smiled at Taro. "What do you think? Would you like a job?" Taro's tail wagged faster. After 6 years on the streets, was he finally being offered a real home? "And of course," Miss Luna continued, gently petting one of the kittens, "we'll need someone to help look after these little ones until they're old enough for adoption. Someone patient and kind, someone like you." For the first time in years, Taro felt truly needed. He wasn't just the friendly neighborhood stray anymore. He had a purpose, a job, and most importantly, a family to protect. As Miss Luna set up a cozy bed in her office for the kittens, Taro lay down next to them, his heart full of joy. The tiny kittens snuggled against his warm fur, no longer afraid. That night, as the stars came out over Pine Valley Street, Taro didn't do his usual evening rounds. Instead, he stayed in the clinic, watching over his new charges, knowing that tomorrow would bring a whole new adventure, not just for the kittens, but for him too. Outside the clinic window, the regular visitors to Pine Valley Street would have to find a new morning friend. But somehow, Taro knew they would understand. After all, every stray dog deserves a chance to become a hero, even if it's just to 3 tiny kittens who needed someone to believe in them. The next morning at Pine Valley Veterinary Clinic started early. Miss Luna had spent the night on the small couch in her office, not wanting to leave the kittens alone on their first night. She woke up to find Taro still sitting guard, his eyes barely staying open. "You can sleep now," she told him softly. "I'll watch them." Taro yawned but didn't move from his spot. The kittens were curled up against his belly, making tiny purring sounds in their sleep. The clinic would open in an hour, and there was much to do. Miss Luna made a quick sign for the front desk. "Meet Taro, our new comfort assistant." She placed a soft bed under her desk where Taro could rest between his new duties. The first patient of the day was Pickle, an overweight hamster who needed a checkup. Usually, Pickle would hide in his carrier and refuse to come out. But today was different. As soon as the little hamster saw Taro's gentle face peering at him, he came right out. Taro sat perfectly still, watching as Miss Luna weighed Pickle and checked his teeth. "Well, this is new," said Pickle's owner, Mr. Frost. "He's never been this calm at the vet before." Word spread quickly through Pine Valley about the stray dog who had saved 3 kittens and become a vet assistant. People started bringing treats and old blankets to the clinic. Mrs. Kapoor brought her famous chicken soup, insisting that a working dog needed proper meals. The kids from the elementary school made a special detour after classes to wave at Taro through the clinic windows. The kittens grew stronger each day. Miss Luna named them according to their personalities. The black one who was always getting into trouble became Mischief. The orange tabby who loved to cuddle was named Snuggles. And the tiny gray one who watched everything with big serious eyes became Professor. Taro took his job as kitten dad very seriously. He cleaned their faces after meals, taught them not to scratch the clinic furniture, and most importantly, showed them how to be brave when meeting new animals. The kittens followed him everywhere, turning the simple act of walking across the clinic into an adorable parade. But not everything was perfect. One rainy evening, just as Miss Luna was closing up, a loud knock came at the door. It was Animal Control Officer Hawk, and he didn't look happy. "We've received complaints," he said, looking at his notebook, "about a stray dog working in a medical facility. That's against regulations." Miss Luna stood her ground. "Taro isn't a stray anymore. He lives here now." "Does he have a license? Vaccinations? Training certificates?" Officer Hawk asked, raising an eyebrow. Before Miss Luna could answer, something extraordinary happened. The waiting room, which they thought was empty, suddenly filled with people. Mrs. Kapoor was there, and Mr. Rodriguez and Chef Zephyr. Even grumpy old Mrs. Pine from the bookstore showed up. They had seen Officer Hawk's car and came running. "Taro helped my cat give birth last week," Mrs. Kapoor said. "He kept her calm the whole time. He spotted my dog's ear infection before it got serious," added Mr. Rodriguez. "Started whining and pawing at Rex's ear until I brought him in." One by one, people shared stories about how Taro had helped their pets feel better at the clinic. Officer Hawk looked overwhelmed. "That's all very nice," he said, "but rules are rules. Unless he gets proper certification as a therapy animal." "I'll pay for it," Chef Zephyr interrupted. "Whatever training he needs." "We'll all chip in," Mrs. Pine agreed, and others nodded. Miss Luna felt tears in her eyes. This wasn't just about saving Taro's job anymore. This was Pine Valley Street coming together to help someone who had always helped them. Officer Hawk looked at his notebook again, then at the crowd of determined faces. Finally, his stern expression softened a bit. "You have 2 weeks to get the paperwork started," he said. "And he'll need all his shots documented." After everyone left, Miss Luna sat on the floor next to Taro, who had watched the whole scene while keeping one eye on the kittens playing nearby. "You've built quite a fan club," she told him, scratching behind his ears. "But I guess you've been building it for years, one kind act at a time." Taro just wagged his tail and went to check on Mischief, who was trying to climb the reception desk. As he gently picked up the kitten and put him back with his siblings, Miss Luna couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best guardians weren't the ones with certificates and training. Sometimes they were just ordinary souls with extraordinary hearts. That night, as Miss Luna was getting ready to leave, she noticed something different. The kittens, now bigger and more playful, were teaching Taro how to have fun again. Professor was batting at his tail, Snuggles was climbing on his back, and even serious old Taro couldn't help but play along. It made her realize that sometimes when you save someone, they end up saving you right back. The next 2 weeks at Pine Valley Veterinary Clinic were busy. Between regular patients, caring for the growing kittens, and preparing for Taro's certification test, Miss Luna barely had time to breathe. But Taro seemed to take it all in stride. Every morning before the clinic opened, Miss Luna worked with Taro on his training. He learned to sit quietly during examinations, to approach scared animals slowly, and to follow basic commands. The truth was he already knew most of these things, he just needed to show it officially. The kittens were growing fast. Mischief had discovered how to open cabinet doors, leading to an interesting morning when Miss Luna found all the cotton balls scattered across the floor. Snuggles had appointed himself the official greeter, running to the door whenever the bell rang. Professor spent hours watching Miss Luna work, his little head tilted as if taking mental notes. One morning, a week before Taro's test, something unexpected happened. A young girl named Blossom came into the clinic, holding a small box. Her eyes were red from crying. "I found him in our garden," she said, opening the box to reveal a baby rabbit with an injured leg. "Can you help him?" Miss Luna gently examined the rabbit while Taro kept Blossom company, letting her hold his paw. The rabbit's leg wasn't broken, just sprained, but the little animal was terrified. That's when Professor, the most serious of the kittens, did something amazing. He jumped onto the examination table and started purring. The scared rabbit stopped trembling. Professor lay down next to him, still purring, and slowly the rabbit began to relax. Miss Luna watched in amazement. "Well," she said, "looks like someone's learning to be a comfort assistant too." When Officer Hawk came by to check on their progress, he found the clinic running smoother than ever. Taro was helping with a nervous puppy's first checkup, while the kittens entertained other patients in the waiting room. Even Officer Hawk had to smile when Snuggles rubbed against his legs, leaving orange fur on his black pants. Finally, the day of Taro's certification test arrived. The examiner was a stern-looking woman named Dr. Maple, who carried a clipboard and seemed unimpressed by the crowd of supporters waiting outside the clinic. "This is highly irregular," she said, looking at her notes. "A former stray dog? With no prior training." But Taro wasn't worried. One by one he passed each test. He stayed calm when Dr. Maple dropped a metal tray, showed perfect manners when meeting her test animals, and followed every command perfectly. Even Dr. Maple had to admit she was impressed. The final test was the hardest, helping with a real emergency. Just as Dr. Maple was packing up her clipboard, a car screeched to a halt outside the clinic. A family rushed in with their cat, who was having trouble breathing after eating something she shouldn't have. Without being told, Taro cleared a path to the exam room, kept the other waiting patients calm, and even managed to keep the kittens from getting underfoot. His presence helped the worried family stay calm while Miss Luna worked to help their cat. Dr. Maple watched it all, making notes on her clipboard. When the emergency was over and the cat was resting safely, she turned to Miss Luna with a small smile. "Well," she said, "I've never seen anything quite like this. But I cannot deny that Taro has exceeded all our requirements. Congratulations, you have officially passed your therapy animal certification." The waiting room erupted in cheers. Mrs. Kapoor brought out a cake she'd been hiding in her car, and Chef Zephyr appeared with special treats for all the animals. Even Officer Hawk showed up to offer his congratulations. As the sun set on Pine Valley Street that evening, Miss Luna sat in her office looking at the scene before her. Taro was wearing his new official therapy dog vest, looking very proud. Professor was curled up next to the baby rabbit, who was healing nicely. Mischief was teaching the clinic's resident guinea pig how to play peekaboo, while Snuggles napped in the last patch of sunlight from the window. "You know," she said to Taro, "when I opened this clinic, I thought I was just going to be treating animals. I never expected to find a family." Taro wagged his tail and put his head on her lap. Outside, the streets of Pine Valley were quiet except for the happy chatter of people heading home. Inside, the little clinic had become more than just a place for sick pets to get better. It had become a place where strays could become heroes, where kittens could become nurses, and where an old dog could teach everyone that it's never too late to find your purpose. That night, as Miss Luna locked up the clinic, she looked at the sign she'd made weeks ago. Under "Meet Taro, our comfort assistant," she added something new, and family. Because that's what they had become, a slightly unusual, completely wonderful family. And as anyone in Pine Valley would tell you, those are the very best kind.